Hi, this is Professor Cordis, and this is the Week 8 lecture video for English 353 Children's Literature. This week, ladies and gentlemen, we talk about Christianity, the allegorical themes that we find within children's literature, and we primarily focus on a piece of C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia. So we're going to be reading The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which is not necessarily a very common book to go to in the series. However, it is very purposeful in the allegorical themes in which it exudes. So now, let me first preface by saying that the reason why we tackle Christianity and these allegorical themes at the end is simply because these Christian themes, this idea of right versus wrong, the idea of the hero's journey, the concepts of seeing biblical truth in literature is kind of threaded throughout our various stories that we have read. It may not be as in your face or on the forefront as it is here with the Chronicles of Narnia. However, it is still within the literature. Now, we could go back to The Princess and Curdie. We could go back to Wonder. We can go back to all of the different stories that we've read, and there could be some component of Christian themes seen throughout. Now, when we talk about Christian themes, that does not necessarily mean, God versus Satan, good versus evil, the concepts of morality. There's lots of components. If you were to take a moment and stop and go to scripture, there are multiple fables, there are multiple stories, there's multiple metaphors that help teach a lesson to the reader, help the readers to understand how they should behave, how they should act, how they should respond. And so it's not necessarily like, let's pick up on the Jesus figure, self-sacrificing to save the world. Like there's that component, and that may not be seen in every piece of children's literature, but there's components and motifs of self-sacrifice. There's motifs of what is the greater good. When we talk about Christianity or any type of religion, we have to find those bigger umbrella ideas and themes and see how those transition from one story to the next, okay? Now, there is obviously biblical truth found in Scripture. There is multiple religions that deal with the same components of right versus wrong, loving one another. The list is tremendous. When we look at the Chronicles of Narnia, and specifically when we look at Voyage of the Dawn Treader, we are taking a look at some of those allegorical themes. We're going to take a look at those ideas and motifs. Now, I keep saying the word motifs. Motif is a reoccurring theme that's found within one text or multiple texts. So C.S. Lewis, the Christian allegorical themes, very present. We see that from the very beginning of his first story, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, when that was published. If you were to go and look at all 7 of these books and put them in order, put them in chronological order, you would begin to notice a set pattern of how that mirrors and represents items for Scripture and what is found in the Bible. When you look at just one text, you have to identify what's in there. So it's almost like we are doing a close reading for just this one book that's found out of the 7. So when we take a look at Christian themes, we have to identify what's happening for the reader. Okay, that's one of the biggest components for us. How is the reader picking up on these ideas? Now, children, readers, they may not be able to pick up on the components of, this matches what's said in, the Gospels and the New Testament. Child readers are not going to be able to do that. They're going to be able to pick up on the ideas, the message, the lesson that is being learned, okay? And so those are the concepts that are going to impact readers. So I'm going to use the Chronicles of Narnia as an example, simply because I want you to enjoy the Voyage of the Dawn Treader holistically and make your own conclusions about that. There is an ancillary video from the Lewis Lectures, which does a phenomenal job of pulling apart the voyage of the Dawn Treader. So if you're kind of like, oh, I want more, go to that one, listen through that, and then as you read through the text, you'll be able to find those ideas. Looking at the Chronicles of Narnia, you obviously have your protagonists, you have the four pensive children, but you also have this idea of the White Witch and Aslan, and those are our Christ figure, our Satan figure, the struggle, and you see that with Edmund because he is the protagonist that the reader kind of jumps along with. He is the one that has to make a decision. He is the one that realizes his impact has gone or his decisions have impacted his siblings. So we, as the reader, travel along with him. Even though there's three other characters that travel to Narnia, we're going along with him and seeing his response. Now, the child reader will identify with that and be able to say, how am I going to respond in that situation of right versus wrong? Betraying my siblings, doing what is right. How would I accept forgiveness as Aslan gives forgiveness to Edmund? So those ideas of loving one another, forgiveness, right, making right decisions or moral decisions that kind of impact others, those are the concepts of Christian themes in Christian allegory. I read through a series called The Edge Chronicles, and in the very first book that was published, it's not the first chronological, it's called Into the Deep Woods. It deals with Twig, the main protagonist, as he ventures along the path, and he comes in contact with the Gloamglossler. And the Gloamglossler essentially is a shapeshifter and kind of begins to lure and tempt Twig off of the path into his own desires. When I read through that, it's not a straightforward allegorical text. It uses those motifs, those reoccurring themes, those Christian ideals, and pulls them in to help communicate to the reader the subconscious, oh, hey, if I'm being tempted to go off the path, what would I do? When you bring a child into the decision-making process, when you bring the child into the text, they are able to kind of cognitively grow, mature in the way that they process and think in regards to the bigger world. So if you were to look at James and the Giant Peach, and the way that James responds to his very physical and verbally abusive aunts, you would begin to notice how he is responding. Now, there's not any straightforward Christian allegory in those components. We know that his aunts are really evil, and we notice what James does and how he responds and what's good for him. So even though those we would not classify those as Christian themes like we would for the Chronicles of Narnia, we are still, the reader still identifies with what is happening and makes decisions for his or her own life. Okay. So just as I was reading through the Oz series as a child, I would be able to pick up on what the protagonist's decisions are, whether that was Dorothy, Tip, Jack Pumpkinhead, the Scarecrow. All of those characters are making decisions, and I'm able to sit there and say, okay, how does this fall into me? And because I grew up in a Christian home, how does this apply to my faith? So whether it's outright, faith in your face, or if it's subconscious, hey, we're going to talk about these themes, there's a component that the child reader will pick up on. Okay. So as you read through the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, begin to notice those overarching umbrella type themes and ideas that transcend within Christianity. So are you looking for ideas of forgiveness, self-identification, being adopted into a family? What are those bigger components that you can see that almost help bridge the gap to create a faith-based conversation? So a lot of times when I am sharing my faith or sharing the Gospels, it's usually done within literature. One of my favorite pieces to actually use is Paradise Lost, which talks about the fall of Satan, and his kind of remarks and what that means for his placement on earth and what that did. It's kind of a retelling of the stories in Genesis from a completely different perspective. Now I have to teach that as part of the AP literature requirement for high school, for secondary. But when I do that, there's tons of conversations. We bring in scripture as literature to balance it out. We bring in C.S. Lewis. We bring in other components, and we begin to analyze what is actually happening. What's going on for these characters? What are the bigger themes and concepts that we know and understand? And my students, who are at that point 17, 18 years old, are able to make those connections with their own faith or with their own lives, with the pieces of literature that we're studying, and as well as the Christian themes that they are familiar with. Okay, so the idea here is that we, teachers, educators, parents, adults, are responsible for allowing children to read, to think and process, to help guide, and let them come to conclusions on their own. Let them identify, hey, this is familiar. I mean, we can bridge the gap all we want. When my daughter read through the Chronicles of Narnia in her 5th grade year, she began to notice the distinct allegories. Okay, she began to notice, oh, this is like what's said in the Gospels in the book of Mark. Like, she was able to pick up on that rather quickly. And so when we look at the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, there are lots of things that can be said and can be done. But us as the adults, we have the responsibility to inform, to teach, to enlighten. We have the responsibility of making sure that things are not misunderstood. We have to do the best of our abilities to say, yeah, look at these. What are the Christian themes that you see? Or you don't even have to say themes, connections, right? You don't even have to say Christianity, because children will be able to pick up on right versus wrong. They'll be able to pick up on the idea of loving one another or forgiveness. So those components, as you begin to pull apart this text, are going to be very substantial. Okay, I have talked enough. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader is a wonderful, fantastic read. I hope you enjoy it. I also put in for you in the lecture video, I did put in the movie trailer. If you are familiar with the movie trailer or the film that was made years ago, you guys could obviously celebrate with the end of the course by comparing and watching that if you'd like. If you have any questions or concerns along the way regarding the Voyage of the Dawn Treader or this assignment, for this assignment, you are doing a discussion board post kind of as a response. It asks you to kind of look at the novel as a whole. So as you read through, you may be able to pick up on, oh, there's this concept of family, the concept of loving one another, forgiveness, and you can be able to piece things together. And if you have a question, you can definitely let me know. Okay. Happy reading. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you are able to make a connection to your own life, to your own spirituality, to your own religion, for you to not just read a great fantasy story, but to find a connection that's applicable to your life so that there is some sort of change. Okay. Message me if you have any questions or concerns. I'll talk to you guys later.